Hello people, welcome back to my channel. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Liz of Ladensercrotchets, and in this tutorial we're going to make this beautiful semicircular sling bag. I hope you're going to enjoy making it because I know I totally did. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and let's get started on the tutorial. You need the following materials to make the bag. First you need a crochet hook. I'll be using my 6.5mm crochet hook, t-shirt yarn, D-rings, snap hooks, a lock, a chain, a pair of scissors, and a darning needle. Begin with a slip knot. And chain 7. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Make sure that your stitches are not too tight and not too loose. After you get your 7 chains, you're going to add one more chain. 1, then go into the 7th stitch. So you would have gone to this stitch right here, but I like going onto this stitch in the middle of the stitches. So this stitch is right here. That's where I'm going to work my single crochets, and I'm going to work one single crochet into each of those stitches. So into the 7th stitch, one single crochet, into the next stitch, another single crochet, and you're going to place one single crochet into each of the stitches for a total of 7 single crochets. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, and finally into the last stitch we place the last single crochet, and that makes it 7. Now when you get to this last stitch, we've already placed one stitch into it, so we're going to place 2 more for a total of 3 into that same stitch. So that is 1 and 2. And by doing that, that's going to help us turn to the other side of our starting chain. And then we start working one single crochet into each of the stitches on the other side. So in this case, we're going to work into the back, this stitch that looks like a back loop right there, and we're going to work one single crochet into every stitch for a total of 6 single crochets. So this will be 1, 2, 3. I'm working over the tail so that I do not have to weave it in. So that's 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to have the last stitch there, so they're going to be 7 single crochets like that. And we've gotten to the end of our first round. Is it a round? Yeah, let's call it a round because we're going all around the chain to this point. But then we're not going to work round. We're going to chain 1 and turn so that we begin the second round. And to do that, we're going to place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 single crochets. So one single crochet into the next 6 single crochets, or the next 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Once you get your 6 single crochets, we have the 3 stitches that are in the same stitch, and each of those 3 stitches are going to get 2 single crochets each. So this first one, we place 2 single crochets into the same stitch, 1 and 2. Then the next one gets 2, 1, 2. Again, the next one also gets 2, 1 and 2. Now the remaining stitches will each get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 single crochets to the end of round 2. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 single crochets. To begin round 3, we chain 1 and turn, Then we're going to have the first 7 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Then the next stitch is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So here we're going to have 1 and 2. The next stitch gets 1 single crochet, so 1, followed by 2 into the same stitch. So we'll have 1 and 2. Then the next one gets 1 single crochet. So this one right here gets 1 single crochet. Then the next stitch gets 2 single crochets. So we'll have 1 and 2. Then all the remaining stitches till we get to this end will each get 1 single crochet, and we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So that's round 3 done. We do round 4. Again, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we begin with 7 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches for the next 7 stitches. So into the first stitch we place 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and place 1 single crochet into the next 6 stitches for a total of 7. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's my first 7 stitches. The next stitch gets 2 single crochets into the same stitch, so 1 and 2. The next one gets 1 single crochet, and the next one gets 1. Then this next one gets 2 into the same stitch. Then the next 2 each get 1 single crochet, so 1 and 2. Then the one that follows will get 2 of them. So when you get to this point, all the other remaining stitches to the end will each get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 single crochets to the end of round 4. Chain 1 and turn to begin the next round. This is round 4. We are beginning round 4. The one that we've just ended was round 3. Now for round 4 we're going to work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Start with 8 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches. So those are 8 single crochets. Now the next stitch gets 2 of them. Then the next 3 stitches each gets 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 1, 2 and 3. Then that next stitch gets 2 into the same stitch, 2 single crochets into the same stitch, 1 and 2. Then the next 3 stitches each get 1. So 1, 2, 3. Then the next stitch will get 2 of them into the same stitch. So we're going to have 1 and 2 single crochets, and then the remaining stitches each is going to get just one. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 and 8. So a total of 8 single crochets, one into each stitch, till you get to the end of this round. And this is our round 4. In one turn. Round 5, we begin with 1 single crochet into the next 8 stitches. I have my 8 stitches. The next stitch will get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Then the next 4 stitches, 1 2 3 and 4, will each get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 1 2 then the next stitch gets 2 into the same stitch, so 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. The next 4 stitches, each is going to get 1. So you're going to have 1 2 3 and 4. Then that next stitch will get 2 of them, 2 single crochets. And all the remaining stitches to the end will each get 1 single crochet. And you're going to have a total of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9 single crochets. I'm done with that round, and at this point we are done with these parts of the bag. So this first semicircular part is done. I'm going to get my pair of scissors and cut off the yarn. Then I'll chain 1 and pull the yarn through and fasten it. Then I'll just get my yarn needle and hide this tail inside the stitches. Our first panel is done, and we're ready to do the other panel. Now the other panel is going to be rectangular, and because we began with 7 stitches for this one, we're going to double the stitches in the other panel. So we're going to begin with 7 stitches, 14, that is. Begin with a slip knot and chain 14. I have my 14 chains. I'm going to add 1 more, and then I'll start working with the 14th stitch. So add 1 more, go at the back of the 14th stitch right here and work a single crochet And for this one, you might need a stitch marker to make things easier, so that you know where the beginning stitch is. So make your first single crochet and mark the first stitch. Using my stitch marker right here, I'm going to mark this first stitch right there, and then I'm going to continue to the end, placing 1 single crochet into these stitches right here for a total of 14 single crochets. So this is our stitch number 2. So I have my 14 stitches, 1 single crochet into each of the stitch, and in this case we're going to be working in rounds. So when you get to that point, we're going to place 2 more single crochets into that stitch for a total of 3, and it's going to be our turning points, 1 and 2. So that stitch has 3 single crochets, and now we're going to work onto these stitches till we get to the beginning point, placing 1 single crochet into each of the stitches. So at this point we're going to have so we work a total of 12 single crochets, and we have the last stitch right here. So at this point where we placed our first single crochet, we're going to place 2 more to make it 3. So 1 and 2. Now do not complete the second one, leave it hanging like this. Then to complete that round, you're going to go onto the back loop of the first stitch, and then you're going to pull a loop and slip stitch it all like that, and our first round is complete. Then pull out the stitch marker, and then we're going to be going in between the stitches, like at this point right here. We place 2 single crochets into that first stitch. We are not chaining, you're just going to go direct in between that stitch and place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and make sure to mark your first stitch. So mark this first stitch. We are in round 2. We've just begun round 2 with 2 single crochets into the first stitch. The next stitch right here will get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 1 single crochet into the next stitch. The next one will also get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have 2 single crochets. Then we're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So work a total of 12 single crochets, 1 into each stitch, and once you're done with the 12 stitches, I'll meet you to show you what to do next. Once you're done with the 12 stitches, the next stitch is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. The next 3 stitches, placed 2 single crochets into each of them. So we're going to have 1 and 2 into the same stitch. The next one we place again 2 of them. And then the third one also, they're supposed to be 3, so those are 2. And then where's the third one? Third one is right here. Then we are going to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 12 stitches. So right here we have don't mind my yarn, it's a bit thin at this point, and so I'm just going to work it with it as it is, but it's not supposed to be that thin. I'll just work with it that way, and I'm doing a total of 12 single crochets, or at least, or until I have 2 stitches remaining before I get to the stitch marker. Make sure that your stitches are not too tight, because if they are too tight, your panel is going to be folded and you want it straight. I have my 12 single crochets and I have 2 stitches remaining. Into each of those 2 stitches remaining, we place 2 single crochets. So 2 single crochets into this first one, 1 and 2. Then the next one also gets 2, but we're going to work 1 complete single crochet and 1 that is not complete, like that. Then we slip stitch onto the first stitch of that second round, slip stitch all the way, like that. And round 2 is done. We're going to pull out the stitch marker, and into that first stitch we place 2 single crochets. So we're going to have 1 and 2 single crochets, and then we're going to mark our first stitch. This is round 3. Then we're going to work 1 single crochet into every stitch until we get to this point where we have 2 stitches into the same stitch, and that is going to be a total of 13 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches. So we're going to have 1, 2, I have my 13 single crochets, and the next stitch is going to get 2 into each. That is, the next stitch is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So 1 and 2. The next stitch gets 1 single crochet. The one that follows gets 2 single crochets into the same stitch. The following one, or the one that follows, gets 1, and then the next one gets 2, and we've turned to the other side. Next we work 1 single crochet into each of the next 13 stitches. So I'm going to work 1 into each of the 13. When I get my 13 stitches, I'll meet you at this point to show you what to do next. So work your 13 single crochets. Make sure that your stitches are not too tight, and they should also not be too loose. I have my 13 single crochets, and now this next stitch will get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Then the next one gets just 1 single crochet. The one that follows gets 2. Then the last stitch gets an incomplete single crochet, like that, and then we slip stitch onto the first stitch to complete the round, that is round 3. We pull out the stitch marker and begin round 4. We begin round 4 by placing 2 single crochets right here in the first stitch. And we're going to mark our first stitch. The next 14 stitches each get just 1 single crochet. So work 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 stitches. I have my 14 single crochets from this point to this point. So the next stitch is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And the next 2 stitches will each get 1 single crochet. So right here. Into the next stitch we place 2 single crochets. Then 2 that follow, 1 and 2, each will get 1 single crochet. The next stitch will get 2 single crochets. The next 14 stitches on this other side will each get just 1. So place 1 single crochet into each of the next 14 stitches. So I have the 14 single crochets. So the next stitch is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. The 2 that follow will each get 1. The one that follows that will get 2 of them. 2 single crochets into the same stitch. The following stitch gets 1 single crochet, and in the last stitch gets an incomplete single crochet, like that, and then slip stitch into the back loop of the first stitch. Pull out the stitch marker and begin round 5. Let me see, how many rounds do we have right now? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we begin in round 5. Our first stitch of round 5 is this one right here, and it's going to get 2 single crochets. then mark the first stitch and place 1 single crochet into each of the next 15 stitches. So these ones, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 and 15. Once you get here, I'll meet you there to show you what to do next. I've done the 15 single crochets, and now this stitch after the 15th is going to get 2 single crochets. Then we're going to have 1 single crochet into the next 3 stitches. Then the one that follows is going to get 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Followed by 3 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches. So we're going to have 1, 2 and 3. Followed by 2 single crochets into the same stitch. This one right here will get 2. We are on the other side, and the next 15 stitches each will get 1 single crochet. So we're going to have a stitch onto this 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 and 15. After the 15 single crochets, the stitch that follows will get 2 single crochets. Then we're just going to alternate the way we did on the other side. 2 single crochets, then 3 single crochets, 1 into each of the next 3. So 1, 2 and 3. Then the next one is 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Then 2 single crochets, 1 into the next 2. So we have 1, then 2, and the last stitch, remember, is incomplete, like that, and then a slip stitch into the back loop of the first stitch. Pull out the stitch marker, begin the next round, which is our round 1 2 3 4 5, our round 6. We begin it with 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And mark the first stitch, then 1 single crochet into the next 16. So we're going to work 1 single crochet till we get to the 16 point. So I'll do the 16 single crochets from this point. I have my 16, so the next one is 2 into the same stitch. The next one gets 1, then the next one gets 1, for a total of 4. So that's 2, 3 and 4. And then the one that follows gets 2 single crochets into the same stitch. The next 4 single crochets each get, or the next 4 stitches each get just 1 single crochet. Followed by 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Then followed by 1 single crochet into each of the next 16 stitches. I have my 16 stitches, so now we place 2 into the same stitch, then 1 single crochet into the next 4, the next stitch gets 2 single crochets into the same stitch, then 1 single crochet into the next 3, we are in the last stitch, so an incomplete single crochet and slip stitch onto that first stitch in the back loop, like that. We are done with round 6. Those are 6 rounds, 1 2 3 4 5 and 6. And at this point we are done with our that other panel, and this is how we're going to connect our bag together to make the semicircular bag. So once we've joined them together, this is how it's going to look. So we're going to work on the third panel that joins the 2 panels on the sides. To make that part that is going to join these 2 panels, you're going to need your D-rings, close one of the D-rings and make a slip knot, then chain 3, 1 2 and 3, chain 1 more, go back into the third stitch with a single crochet, get the D-ring, place it, go into the next stitch and place your ring like that on the hook and complete this single crochet with the D-ring in place. Then do the last single crochet. You should have 3 single crochets, but the D-ring should be in the second stitch, like that. That is our first row. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 2. Row 2 is going to be 1 single crochet into the first stitch and 1 single crochet into the next 2 stitches for a total of 3. Row 3, chain 1 and turn, begin with a single crochet and work 3 single crochets in row 3. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 4 and 3 single crochets in row 4. Then we're going to have 3 single crochets in row 5 and in row 6. So chain 1, we have our first 6 rows. In row 7 we're going to work an increase on both sides. So chain 1 into the first stitch, we're going to place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. The middle stitch gets 1 single crochet and the last stitch gets 2 single crochets. So in row 7 you should have a total of 5 stitches. Chain 1 to begin row 6 and turn, then 1 single crochet into each of the stitches for a total of 5. This is row 8, sorry, this is row 8, and you should have 5 single crochets into each, 1 single crochet into each of the 5 single crochets. That's row 8 done. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 9, and row 9 again has 5 stitches. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 10. Row 10 again has 5 stitches, 1 single crochet into each of the stitches. We chain 1 and turn to begin row 11, and we're going to work row 11 up to row 25 with 5 single crochets. So 1, I'll work my 25 rows of 5 single crochets with the 5 single crochets. So once I have my 25 rows, I'll come back and show you what to do next. So chain 1 in row 12, just 5 single crochets, 1 into each of the stitches. My 25 rows are done. So we're going to do row 26 differently, and we're going to chain 1, then turn and place 1 single crochet into the first stitch. This is row 26. We skip the next stitch and single crochet into the third, skip and single crochet into the last stitch. So we are reducing our stitches from 5 to 3 stitches. Row 27, chain 1 and turn, single crochet into the first stitch, into the next, and into the next for a total of 3. Chain 1 and turn. This is row 28. Row 28 will have 3 single crochets, row 29 and row 30. So do up to row 30 and I'll meet you in row 31. Row 31 is our last row. I've done my 30 rows, so I'm going to chain 1 and turn to begin row 31. And we have our D-ring on this one end. We're going to attach the D-ring on the other end because they should be on the same side. So the D-ring is on this side, so it should be on the same side with the other D-ring. And so after chaining 1 and turning, I'll do my first single crochet in the first stitch. Get my D-ring, place it over there. Then complete the single crochet and do the last single crochet into the last stitch. Then chain 1. Do not cut off the yarn. We're going to use it to join to the other panel. So this part is done and it's going to join our panels right here. Now we're going to attach, and we begin with the smaller panel, this one. Hold it to the right side like this. Pull your loop. After chaining 1, go into the first stitch of this side and onto the first stitch of that joining panel and pull the loop through to the other side like that. We're going to join with slip stitches. So we've joined the first stitches, the first corresponding stitches, then into the next row and the next row of the joining panel. Then we pass, the yarn is on the other side, we pull it through and slip stitch, pull it through and slip stitch, just like that. The third, with the third row on the other side, put the yarn through. So we're just joining the corresponding rows with slip stitches. So this row with the row on the other side, pull the loop, pull it through, slip stitch. The next one, We join the corresponding rows and stitches till we get to the top right here. That part is joined up to the top, and this is what we have at this point. So I'm going to continue slip stitching onto these rows, and just to make sure that this is going to be neat. It's not very neat, and to make it neater than that, so we're going to slip stitch onto each of the rows. So each of the rows is going to get a slip stitch. So right here into the first row, slip stitch like that. Into the next one, place a slip stitch. The next one gets a slip stitch at this point right here. Then so we're just placing one slip stitch on top of each of the rows. I skipped a row there. Right here. We get to the last one at this point and slip stitch. Then cut off the yarn, pull it through. We're going to use the yarn needle and hide this yarn inside the stitches. So we need to join this other panel to our bag like this. And I'm going to identify the one of the stitches where we had 2 stitches right here, and then from this point I'm going to count 9 stitches. So from here I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So into that 9 stitch I'll go through that 9 stitch and through to the other on the first row of the other side like this. That point, get the yarn, make a slip knot and pull the yarn through to the other side. So just like that, then into the next stitch and onto the next row, pull the yarn and slip stitch the next. Just like we've done with the other side, we're going to slip stitch like this until we get to these ends. So just continue slip stitching like this all the way around till you get to this point. Make sure that the stitches are corresponding each other well. Do not miss any stitch to make sure that your bag is well shaped. So this is what we have right now. I'll just continue slip stitching into the next stitch and onto the next row of the joining panel. I've slip stitched all the way to these parts and our bag is well joined. This is how it's going to look like. So I'm going to continue with the slip stitches till I get to the point where we have the 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So just continue with the slip stitches without joining this time round because we are on the cover part of the bag. So we just continue with the slip stitch, just 1 slip stitch into every stitch. So those are 2. At this point, this is where we have our 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So now instead of slip stitching, continuing with the slip stitches right here, we're going to slip stitch on the loop, on the front loop. like this. So instead of slip stitching here, we are taking just one loop and slip stitch right there. So we're going to slip stitch in the front loop till we get to this point where we have the 2 double crochets again in the same stitch. So there's these 2 single crochets at the middle. We don't want to slip stitch up to that point. We are slip stitching in the front loops till we get to the one on the end. So we have one on this end and one on this end. So continue with the front loop slip stitches. So I've gotten to the point where we have the 2 double crochets, and now I'll start slip stitching on the two loops instead of just the front, and I'm going to slip stitch till I get to this point, to the beginning where I started joining the panel, the top panel. Into that beginning point, slip stitch again, and that is our last slip stitch. Then we're going to cut off the yarn, pull it through, get the yarn needle, so now this is what we have, and the bag is complete. We have our D-rings attached to the bag. We have the cover of the bag. This is the inside of the bag. So what's remaining is to attach a lock onto the bag, and I'll not be attaching the lock in this tutorial. I'll meet you in the next tutorial to show you how to attach the lock and the straps to the bag. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this tutorial. If you've liked it, kindly leave a comment, like the video, and share it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed to, and see you in the next tutorial as we learn how to attach the lock and the straps to the bag.